fourth. Let's take a look at how to go from a percent to a fraction. Say we have 15%. We want to go from this percent to a fraction. Well, first of all, know that 15%, anytime we see a number in front of a percent symbol, it lets us know it is that number out of 100. That number out of 100. As simple as that. So we can think of it as this way: 15 divided by 100 or 15 over 100. Let's take a look at another one. Say we had 35%. We had 35%. How do we turn that into a fraction? Well, simply 35% is 35 out of 100. So I simply take the 35 and I put that 35 over 100. It's as simple as that. All right, let's take a look at another type of problem. What if we are asked to go from a decimal? How do we go from a decimal to a percent? How do we go from a decimal to a percent? Well, let's take a look at a decimal. Say we had 0.325. How do we go from a decimal to a percent? Well, a couple of things we can do. First, we could simply move the decimal 2 places to the right. My new decimal will be there. Will be 32.5. 32.5. Take a look at that. Say we had another decimal. Say we had 0.46. How do we move that decimal to a percent? Well, again, simply move the decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2, and we have 46.0. Okay? Now, mind you, all of these are percents. All of these are percents. So to go from a decimal to a percent, simply move the decimal 2 places to the right. Say we had 7.79. How do we move that to a percent? Well, again, simply move the decimal 2 places to the right. And so my new decimal is there. So it'll be 779%. Simple as that. All right. Let's take a look at a few more types of problems that you might see. So far we looked at how to go from a percent to a fraction. We looked at how to go from a decimal to a percent. Now let's look at how to go from a fraction to a percent. Now this one might be a little bit tricky. Say we had 5 over 8. And I want to go from a fraction to a percent. Well, a few ways I can do this with or without a calculator. Now remember, a percent is a number out of 100. And so if I want to go from a fraction to a percent, I simply put that fraction equal to a number out of 100. Just like that. And then I'll use the cross multiplication principle to answer this question. I'll cross multiply the 8 with the n, and then I'll cross multiply the 5 with the 100. And so my new problem will be 8 times n equals 5 times 100. Next, I'll solve this problem for n. 5 times 100 gives me 500. 8 times n comes down. I divide both sides by 8. My 8's cancel. And then my problem is n equals 500 divided by 8. Now I know when I solve this, it's going to give me a decimal. So let's go through the process of solving. 500 divided by 8. We'll need a little bit more room for this. So I'm going to erase this. Don't worry. You can always come back, rewind the tape, or play back. So we have 500 divided by 8. To solve this problem, we ask ourselves first, how many times does 8 go into 50? We know that 8 goes into 50 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. I'm sorry, 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. How many times does 8 go into 20? 2 times, very good. 2 times 8 is 16. That gives us a 4. How many times does 8 go into 40? 5 times, very good. 5 times 8 is 40. And we have our 0 there. And so we have our answer, 62.5. So n equals 62.5. 62.5, and we know that is a percent. So we can say our answer is 62.5%. There's our answer. All right? That's how we go from a fraction to a percent. A little bit more of a lengthy process, but don't worry, it's very easy once you get into the habit of practice. Remember, you start off with the original fraction. You make the original fraction equal to a letter, n, over 100, and then you cross multiply, okay? And now lastly, let's look at how to go from a percent to a decimal. This one is not as complicated. It's a little bit easier. How do we go from a percent to a decimal? Remember, at any point along the line, if you have a question, please feel free to go back to that part of the video and go back as many times as you need to until you get understanding. Say we start off with a percent, 49.5%. 49.5%. And we want to go from a percent to a decimal. Well, this one's not as hard. All we have to do is go back to the left 2 places. So I'm going to count back 1, 2 to the left. And my new decimal is there. And so it'll be 49.5. Say we had 35%. How do we go from a percent to a decimal? Well, my decimal starts here, and we're going to go back to the left 2 places. My new decimal is here, and so it'll be 0.35. And then let's just do one more. Say we had 135%. Well, remember, find your decimal, which will be here, and then let's move it 2 places back to the left. 1, 2. My new decimal is there, and so my answer is 1.35. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know we covered a lot of topics around percents. Please go back and re-watch any section where you may have questions, and we'll see you next time.